What is going on, everyone? Welcome into my third mock draft of the 2023 NFL draft season. This is going to be the post-free agency edition. A lot of team needs have shifted. We've got a couple of trades shaking things up. We know where Aaron Rodgers is headed, so we're going to have some trade value speculation there. This should be one of the more fascinating shakeups with the mock draft landscape here. I'm also going to do some bonus second-round picks, a couple of the top picks, and then we're going to show some love to teams like Cleveland, Miami, and the LA Rams and speculate on who they might be targeting in the second round. And this is going to be our last first round only mock draft. Getting into April, these will become 2-round and 3-round mock drafts. So do make sure you're subscribed for that. You don't want to miss my positional breakdowns either. We're going to be doing tight ends, corners, safeties, linebackers. We got plenty of position groups to come, and the frequency in which those are coming will pick up here. I have one more trip this week, headed to Mexico for a tropical vacation with my wife for her birthday, and then we'll be back the last week of March and really going pedal to the metal with draft content leading up to April's draft. Just a couple more things. We're going to be live for the draft. Don't forget to set a reminder on your phone to join me here on YouTube, and if you could, please hit that like button. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you hearing me out, and let's get into it. So the Panthers here picking number 1 now, and this is a what I would do mock draft, trying to place myself in the GM chair of all 32 teams, trying to make the best decision for each team, but I want to keep it somewhat realistic as well. And there is a lot of conversation about the Panthers maybe being more interested in CJ Stroud than Bryce Young, if not going that far about it. Maybe viewing these guys much closer than, say, myself would view these guys. And I wanted to factor that in here. And you guys know at this point, Bryce Young is my number 1 quarterback by a pretty substantial margin. I just think he's a more dynamic player than Stroud. I think he's going to be able to elevate offenses in a way with his creativity that CJ Stroud just isn't necessarily going to, or didn't consistently show that he would at Ohio State. So for me, again, I would take Bryce Young if I were the Panthers, but I would also trade up to the number 1 pick to get him if I were the Texans, if that makes sense. So this is more of a what I would do from the Texans perspective, and take advantage of the fact that the Panthers are willing to trade down and make this swap. Now, for the Panthers, I would be partially critical of this, but I can understand the logic behind it. And I'm not going to act like my evaluations are perfect. I'm not going to act like anybody's quarterback evaluations are perfect, because it's really hard for everybody, NFL GMs, analysts alike. So if you're the Panthers and you think Stroud can be your guy just as much as Bryce Young is, I agree with paying as much as you have to get a seat at the table here. And in this case, it was the number 1 pick. But if you don't really care who you end up with, why not recoup some of those assets to get more help for your new quarterback, especially after they had to give up DJ Moore in that trade? So all that said, let's get on with it here. We are going to take Bryce Young for the Houston Texans, and we are going to take CJ Stroud for the Carolina Panthers at number 2. Both teams hopefully can get their franchise quarterback. And I'm not going to say, I do not hate CJ Stroud. I liked him a lot more than I thought I would. I think he could have a lot of success in Carolina, although, again, truly, I would just take Bryce Young. But we're going to do a little bit of roundabout analysis for that 1-2 pick right there. All right, number 3 is the Arizona Cardinals, and it is incredibly popular to trade down here. Now, I think the Raiders getting Jimmy Garoppolo changes some things here. Not that they aren't interested in a quarterback, because I think they would be, but I'm not so sure with Jimmy Garoppolo there on a nice bridge quarterback contract that they're going to necessarily give up a bunch of picks that they really need to build up this roster in order to come up for who just might be their 3rd quarterback in this draft. Right now, it's very possible that they would, but I'm not sure the urgency is necessarily there. And there will be other teams inquiring about moving up with the Cardinals here. But here's the thing for Arizona. They need players in the worst way. And Will Anderson is a impact blue chip defensive player. I'm not moving down to the 11th pick to get Miles Murphy or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are good players. Draft picks are great, but at a certain point, they need elite talent to build around, and they don't have any of that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So for me, I'm going to actually stay put here. If the Raiders were going to give me a massive overpay to come up here and I could get to 7, where I could still maybe get Tyree Wilson, maybe Jalen Carter, depending how they feel about him, that'd be great, but I don't know if the Raiders are necessarily willing to do that. So I'm actually going to stay put, just take Will Anderson. This is the first pick of a new GM. Just, don't screw it up. And Will Anderson's really freaking good. He is exactly what they need. So I'm just going to stay put and take the edge player out of Alabama. Then at number 4 for the Indianapolis Colts, a tough decision, honestly, between Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. A lot of people linking Anthony Richardson to the Colts, but Will Levis would also make a lot of sense here. To me, this is a what I would do pick here. I would take Will Levis, and I really like Anthony Richardson. Honestly, I was earlier than a lot of people on the Anthony Richardson hype train, coming out and really saying, look out, this guy's going to be a top 10 pick early January. So don't tell me I'm not an Anthony Richardson guy. I am. But the thing is, with Richardson, I really want to get him in a situation where he can sit and develop, which to me, like these next 3 teams, would make a lot of sense, honestly, for him. Seattle, Las Vegas, or Detroit. Whereas the Colts, like, at some point, you're going to probably get impatient and play this guy over Gardner Minshew. And with Anthony Richardson, as I've said, I don't want him developing bad tendencies. I don't want him hurting his confidence, which is sky high at the moment. Like, I want him groomed, prepared, and built around so that when he does get the start, he is locked and loaded, ready to go. And Levis, to me, you can check out my quarterback rankings video on him. I think the narrative on him is honestly, like, I just disagree with what we say about Will Levis and that he's like a boom or bust player. I don't really see that when I watch him play. He actually is really good at reading defenses. I think he handled disguised coverages better than anybody in this class. I think as far as his like eyes and the way he looks off safeties, it's actually really good. I think, Bryce Young's really good at that as well. But the other thing is he played behind such a bad offensive line. I think it's actually going to help him because it's not going to be like Zach Wilson, for example, where he's going to get to the NFL and it's like, oh my God, I have a pass rush. All of a sudden, I got to speed everything up. Will Levis is already going to be playing at that speed. So from a decision-making and a processing perspective, a guy that played in a pro-style offense, made NFL level reads and consistently delivered NFL level throws, I actually think he's got a pretty nice floor. The questions about him are pocket presence and mobility and how much upside is he going to bring to the table and play extension and accuracy, which can have some frustrating moments, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make him a bust. So for me, Will Levis would be my pick here at number 4, as tempting as Anthony Richardson is. And let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks at number 5. And Seattle's got a really difficult decision to make here either. You could go with the developmental guy in Anthony Richardson. You could try to compete and win now in a really, kind of lackluster NFC right now by getting a potentially dominant defensive talent. And I am going to go that route. I'm going to take Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. And I like Tyree Wilson a lot. The traits are remarkable. The length, the power, the ability to push the pocket in this system. It's going to work. And I certainly would think about Jalen Carter here, but with the recent pro day situation and the off-field concerns, let's hit a triple instead of a home run here, if that makes sense. And I think Tyree Wilson would fit right in here. They did sign some interior help in Draymond Jones in free agency. So let's get a little more help off the edge with Tyree Wilson. Then at number 6, the Detroit Lions. I told you, Lions fans, get used to this. As long as Anthony Richardson is here at 6, we're going to take him at 6. I've dove into this 2 picks ago with why this makes sense. I've dove into it in previous mock drafts. I don't want to spend too much time reiterating what I've said, but this is literally the perfect landing spot for Anthony Richardson. He can contribute as a Taysom Hill role as he develops. He's got O-line, he's got coaching. Just an unbelievable fit here for Richardson. Then number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders, who are going to just kind of wait till next year for a quarterback here and go with Jimmy Garoppolo and try to build up the core of this defense. We're going to add another Illinois corner to play next to Nate Hobbs. They're going to go back to the well that worked for them in the past. We're going to take Devon Witherspoon. Honestly, Jalen Carter is extremely tempting, but given their recent history of driving infractions and DUIs and receivers named Henry Ruggs going to jail and never going to play in the NFL again, like, man, that's a pretty tough sell to bring in a guy that has the, questions in the specific area that has proved to be an issue in the Las Vegas area. So I could go Jalen Carter if you're comfortable, but I'm not comfortable there. I think Witherspoon's a fantastic corner, and they need help there just as much as they do up front. With the 8th pick, the Atlanta Falcons are going to take Christian Gonzalez, and I think they'd be happy with either of these corners. And this secondary, all of a sudden, with A.J. Terrell and Richie Grant in year 3, and of course Jesse Bates, who they signed in free agency, they are going to have very quickly one of the best secondaries in the entire NFL. And another kind of group that they can actually build around, because right now the offensive line is like the one thing they have going for them. And then at number 9, the Chicago Bears, where they traded down. Now, I originally, when they made this trade, I was like, man, if they made some good signings in free agency, what about Bijan Robinson here and just give Justin Fields all of the playmakers? I think this is the earliest we could see Bijan go. Maybe the Falcons surprise us at 8, but I think they didn't hit on quite as much of the offensive line that I thought they might. I thought maybe guys like Jawan Taylor or Mike McGlinchey might be options for them at right tackle, but they don't go that route. They're going to leave that tackle spot open right now, and I think that is pretty telling that they want to take a tackle here at 9, and I think that makes sense. So we're going to take Paris Johnson, who protected Justin Fields at Ohio State and is a really impressive tackle prospect. I haven't talked too much about Paris Johnson. My tackle rankings will be coming in April, but he reminds me a lot of Andrew Thomas at Georgia, who I really liked. He was my number 1 tackle in that draft, but so athletic, better just all-around tools and pass protection that I think he maybe gets credit for. So I think him going in the top 10 is totally fine. Before we get to the number 10 pick, I just want to let you guys know about my Patreon. It is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. If you enjoy my draft content and you want to get even more of it, you can do that on my Patreon. You can get access to my full draft rankings with all of my player position rankings, not just the top 10s, every player in the class. We're going to have up to 350 players fully written up, evaluated, and ranked come April's draft. You'll also get exclusive film breakdowns. We most recently did one on Kalijah Cansey, who's a really fun player. And you will also support my channel in the biggest way possible. This would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. I appreciate you checking it out. Let's get back to the video. So the Eagles at number 10, and this is where the Jalen Carter slide is going to stop. I mean, this is basically a free first-round pick that the Eagles got in a trade down. You're reuniting him with Jordan Davis, a need on that defensive line. They do bring Fletcher Cox back, but Javon Hargrave has left. This is kind of a dream scenario for Philly, and I think this is the floor for Jalen Carter. Then with the 11th pick, the Tennessee Titans actually signing Andre Dillard in free agency. And I don't think that entirely rules out taking a tackle, but I don't think it makes it a demand that they take one here. They have other needs as well, and I'm going to take Lucas Van Ness, who really fits their front 4 system under Mike Vrabel. They lose Bud Dupree, but I think Lucas Van Ness can actually be what they thought Bud Dupree could have been for him. For Mike Vrabel, and that is that power rushing guy for stunts that Mike Vrabel wants to run, right? He wants a guy that can crash the pocket and then use guys that can loop and warp in and around blocks. It's not the only thing they do, but man, he's going to give you a really high floor as a pass rusher for that. And he's going to develop other skill sets as well. This guy is remarkably talented. I think he's a perfect fit for the Tennessee Titans. Then at number 12, we have the Houston Texans, who go get Bryce Young, still have this 12th pick. I love that they traded for Shaq Mason to shore up that offensive line. Right now, they really only need a center. I'm not taking that here at 12. I'm going to take another receiver after they just traded away Brandon Cooks officially. I'm going to take Quentin Johnston. He's going to stay close to home in the state of Texas. And now you've got John Mechie coming back. You have Nico Collins. You have Amari Rodgers. You have some legitimate playmakers, a good offensive line, giving the young Bryce Young a real chance to succeed right away in that AFC South. All right, now we get to talk a little bit about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers and how I see this playing out. So there's recent kind of swirlings, a name that has been put out there in Jermaine Johnson being a player that the Packers are potentially interested in. And I think that could very well be a consolation for both sides as far as the Jets not wanting to give up this 13th pick. If the Jets were willing to include Jermaine Johnson, which I think is perfectly reasonable, they still have a lot of players on the edge there. I don't know if Bryce Huff has been brought back or if he's a restricted tender guy, but you got him, and they hit in the 4th round on a kind of guy that took more snaps and Michael Clemens. So it's not that Jermaine Johnson can't play, but I think he is an expendable piece if Green Bay views him as a potential, a guy they would have maybe taken in the 1st round last year. And that is a big need for Green Bay. So for the Jets, you can get out of this without giving up pick 13, I think, if that player is included. So the trade here is going to be Jermaine Johnson, Corey Davis, who I honestly think the only reason he hasn't been cut yet is because Green Bay is interested. And I think that's the reason Green Bay hasn't spent any money in free agency, because they're expecting to take back some contracts in this trade. So Corey Davis played with Matt LaFleur in Tennessee and fits Green Bay's thresholds really well. You get a veteran in the building to help out some of those other young receivers. So you get a couple actual players back for Green Bay. And then it's going to be the 2nd round pick this year and a conditional 2024 pick that is going to be basically anywhere from a 4th round pick up to a 2nd if the Jets win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. So the Jets get out of this without giving up a 1st round pick for Aaron Rodgers, but it doesn't come cheap. It comes, a guy that was a late 1st rounder last year and a couple of a 2nd round pick, and then probably not another 2nd, but if they win a Super Bowl, you're not complaining about it being another 2nd round pick. So that's going to be my trade suggestion there. I think if Jermaine Johnson isn't included, I do think pick 13 here is going to have to be included. But with the Jets staying put, there is really the perfect prospect, if he's there for them, is Peter Skoronski. He's athletic. He can play guard or tackle wherever needs flare up for them, and just kind of be that sort of liquid, mercury to just fill in wherever he's needed. And it's not quite like when Tom Brady went to the Bucs and they landed Tristan Wirfs with the 13th or 14th pick, but it is in a similar way. The Bucs had one last need on that offensive line, and I don't really have to explain it any more than that. This would be a fantastic spot for him. And then at 14, I'm going to stick with Deonte Banks to the New England Patriots. I'm so high on Deonte Banks. It is what it is. I do have him currently set to be higher than Joey Porter. Both really good players, and Porter's not going to last too many picks here. But I think Banks is the corner that Bill Belichick would want, with the speed and the ability to run other coverages as well. But Porter, Banks, either one here. But with those top 2 tackles gone, that's going to be our pick there for New England. And then the Packers at 15 here, getting an edge there in Jermaine Johnson from the Jets really eliminates the need to take Miles Murphy or for Brian Gutekunst to reach on someone like Keon White, that I'm still fully anticipating that he will do, because he can't help himself but take a 3rd round defensive player out of the state of Georgia. And there's not really a guy in this class that would fit that mold. But there is a guy out of Georgia that still fits what Green Bay is looking for here. And I actually wouldn't hate this pick and think it's somewhat realistic, and that's Darnell Washington out of Georgia. And I don't know if he's going to come in officially as my number 1 tight end, but he certainly would be what Green Bay looks for at that position. He is a super not supersized, but just a super version of Mercedes Lewis in that offense. They want blockers up front. They want a guy that can put his hand in the dirt and be a glorified lineman. They want guys that can run crossing routes off of play action. They want guys that can be good after the catch. I really think Darnell Washington fits perfectly with this system and is a realistic pick for Green Bay and would be a good first-round pick for Green Bay. Then at 16, the Washington Commanders are going to take another tight end back-to-back, Dalton Kincaid, out of Utah. And I hadn't really thought of this before, but with Eric Bieniemy coming over, this is a pretty big need for Washington. They still have Logan Thomas, but he's had a hard time producing and staying healthy. And they have John Bates, but he's been more of a number 2 blocker. But they could really use another piece at tight end, and who better than someone that has a lot of comparisons to Travis Kelce with Eric Bieniemy coming over from Kansas City. It just makes so much sense there. So Dalton Kincaid to Washington. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers at 17. We're going to go Joey Porter. You know, if he's there, the bloodlines, his dad played for Pittsburgh. Yes, the Steelers signed Patrick Peterson, but that's a Band-Aid. It's time they get a prolific starter to be a potential number 1 corner, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Number 18, the Detroit Lions. I'm not going to do the same exact picks I did last time, although I still wouldn't rule out Bijan Robinson here to Detroit and just have a super-powered offense. But they did sign David Montgomery, which I think is an upgrade from Jamal Williams and is going to be really successful there. So with that, we are going to address one of the last remaining needs on this team in interior defensive line. Right now, Levi Uzarike is slated to be a starter for them, and that's just not something you can count on. We're going to go with Brian Brzee out of Clemson. I do believe in this guy. He is still really young. The athletic traits absolutely shine when you watch him play. He's got some power. He's got really great quickness at his size. He's a little bit more boom or bust, but when you look at kind of with the injuries and the loss of his 16-year-old sister before his last season, I do believe that he's gonna have the traits to really project to have his best football ahead, especially with a great coaching staff like Detroit has. And then at pick 19, I have the Tampa Bay Bucks taking Nolan Smith. It just makes so much sense. Shaq Barrett, going to be 31 years old, coming off a season-ending injury. Joe Tryon has been okay for them, but you need more answers at edge for a pass rush that was abysmal last year. So Nolan Smith fits that 3-4 system. Just can already picture him in a Bucks jersey. Then the Seattle Seahawks at number 20, Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is going to be a popular one, and with Lockett getting up there in age, it just makes so much sense. You can plug these 3 guys in as a dream team set of receivers for Geno Smith and make life easy on Geno, but in time, Jackson Smith and Jigba can fill into Tyler Lockett's role as your number 2 wide receiver because he probably only has a year or 2 left. Then the Chargers at 21. I didn't really think about this until I tweeted a LaDainian Tomlinson comp for Bijan Robinson, and Chargers Twitter, shout out to you guys, the Chargers have no fans thing is always disproved on Twitter. I mean, my goodness, I wasn't even implying that the Chargers were going to take Bijan Robinson, but I'm the thought of a running back in 2023, the thought of him being a mocked first rounder and being universally loved, I think says something. And it would be so fitting that my LaDainian Tomlinson comped Bijan Robinson, the highest graded player in this entire draft, goes to the Chargers. And Austin Eckler looking for a new contract, whether he gets traded or not, does not matter to me. Austin Eckler cannot hold up as a bruising 3-down bell cow back. He can do some of the goods, like if he decides to come back on what I think is the last year of his deal, you can still use him, but you don't have to pay him long term. Bijan do all of that dirty work, and then in year 2, you can hand all the keys to Bijan. And hey, you can use these guys on the field at the same time in pony personnel, put one of them in the slot. They're both remarkable receiving backs. So Bijan gives you some playmaking help to Justin Herbert, and let's move on. At pick 22, the Baltimore Ravens, we're going to keep the run on receivers going here. We're going to take Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. A lot of people are going to say this is redundant with Marquise Brown. Not even sure how relevant that is because the scheme is changing here, but Zay Flowers is a more complete, well-rounded receiver than Marquise Brown. I think Zay can win on all 3 levels. He can win from the outside. He can win from the slot. Nice after the catch. And Baltimore gets that first-round wide receiver, that impact wide receiver that they've been clamoring for. Then with the 23rd pick, the Minnesota Vikings, we are going to take Cam Smith. The Minnesota Vikings have not spent too much at corner. I do like adding in Byron Murphy, but I still would be addressing cornerback there. We know Brian Flores is going to want 3 good man corners. I think they have 1.5 right now. So let's take Cam Smith, who can play physical, play press man coverage, and I'm not going to say he's Xavier Howard, but as far as like skill set wise, it's not too far off. So I can see this making a lot of sense from a value, need, fit perspective. Number 24, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to take Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. So I know Jags fans are going to say, we have Evan Ingram. He had a great year last year. Evan Ingram is a glorified wide receiver. He can still be a starting player along with Michael Mayer. Evan Ingram is back on a franchise tag. I don't think they see him as the long-term plan. I think he turns 30 this season. Michael Mayer can be what Dallas Goedert was for Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, a true inline starting tight end who's really good after the catch, will block, be a reliable possession tight end. It's actually not a bad comp for Dallas Goedert for Michael Mayer. But I think they can coexist this year, and it gives you a long-term plan, which when you get later in the first round, it's not all about drafting for needs right now, and it's not like Jacksonville has any glaring needs anyway. Then at 25, I'm really curious to see what Giants fans think about this, because I'd be ecstatic if I was a Giants fan for this pick, but it's going to be a little bit out there, and it's John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. And I was just looking at this. I like what they did, bringing in all these receivers, Paris Campbell, and re-signing some of those dudes. And I think they have enough to the point that, there's 3 wide receivers off the board at this point. Jordan Addison scares me, and they just brought in Campbell. Like, if they were going to get a guy, I'd want it to be maybe someone that's more of like a potential true number 1. And I don't know. Jordan Addison, his size really bothers me, and I wish he ran a better time. I still like him, but I don't think you have to take him here after all of the moves they just made in free agency. They have a little bit more freedom than that. Really, to me, the weakest spot of this team is that interior offensive line. You have Ben Bredesen at center, who's replacement level at best, and Josh Azwedu at left guard, who wasn't necessarily good in his rookie year. I know they spent a 3rd-round pick on him, but John Michael Schmitz, to me, I haven't fully finished his grade, but he is just such a rock. He has that dickhead mentality at center. He reminds me of like Ryan Jensen for the Bucks, Landon Dickerson coming out of Alabama, Creed Humphrey. It felt like I was watching that same player, and I think he can be that in the NFL. We've seen Joe Shane in Buffalo, Brian Dable in Buffalo value that center position. So to me, you're getting a day 1 starter at center and can really continue to improve that offensive line, be a better helper for Saquon Barkley in the run game, and buy more time for Daniel Jones. I love this pick. I'm curious what Giants fans think of this pick. Then the Dallas Cowboys at 26. Love what they've done in free agency. They are really going for it here. They get Brandon Cooks. They get Stephon Gilmore. Those were really their 2 biggest needs, along with interior defensive tackle. And if they're going to go for it, let's do it. Let's fill in the last big need here with a player that isn't commonly put in the first round. And yes, this would be kind of a reach, so to speak. But as far as how he fits with this team and completing them, I love it. Mazi Smith out of Michigan. He is an awesome run defender, 325, 330 pounds, really quick feet, exceptionally strong arms. He can come in next to Osa Odigizua, next to that great group of edge players that they have, and actually give you something they have so desperately needed, and that is someone that can play the nose, can shed blocks in the run game, and add some physicality up front, so that when they meet the Niners again, they don't just get dominated up front and ran all over. So Mazi Smith, yeah, it's like 10, 15 picks earlier. Sure, you could try to trade down if you wanted to. I didn't want to really get into that. I would be comfortable doing this if I were Dallas, is kind of my point by making this pick here. And then at 27, I'm going to keep picking a right tackle here for Buffalo, especially after they didn't really get one in free agency. And pick your poison between DeJuan Jones and Darnell Wright. They're very similar players. They're very similarly graded players. My preference is actually DeJuan Jones. I think he's a slightly better pass protector. That length is just so ridiculous. He's so strong. He's actually kind of smooth for a big guy. But whether it was Darnell Wright, whether it was DeJuan Jones, I think it's a home run pick for Buffalo and fills their biggest need. Then the Cincinnati Bengals at 28, and they have really gone all in on this sort of power running game up front. We saw this transition a third of the way last year. You know, they come from that wide zone Shanahan background with Zach Taylor, but around week 6 last year, they went to almost exclusively gap from shotgun, and it changed their entire offense for the better. So let's lean all the way in and take O'Cyrus Torrence out of Florida, who is the ideal power gap running scheme offensive guard, continue to beef up this offensive line. And now over the course of 2 years, it's gone from a total weakness to a true strength. You've got Orlando Brown, you have O'Cyrus Torrence, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, and now competition at right tackle between Lyle Collins and Jonah Williams. And we'll see, they might trade Jonah Williams or release Lyle Collins, but Bengals fans are going to come clamoring for Cordell Volson. Why? Why do you want a guy who's a bottom of the barrel starter? Yeah, it's cool you drafted a guy in the 4th round and he ended up starting, and you've had a hard time finding guys to do that. And yeah, you have Jackson Carman. I get that, but man, let's make this a legitimate dominant strength for the Bengals, a team that does not have a lot of glaring needs. And this is one of them at left guard, in my opinion. So O'Cyrus Torrence out of Florida. Then the New Orleans Saints at pick 29 are going to take Myles Murphy. I've been making this pick for them. You know, I am a little bit lower on Myles Murphy. We'll see if he ends up falling to the kind of back end of the 1st round here, but this is a huge need. They just lost Marcus Davenport, and Cam Jordan not getting any younger, to say the least. Fits their mold as far as bigger bodied edge players, even though I had the hometown kid, Ojulari, ranked higher than Myles Murphy. I will say Murphy, with that size, fits what the Saints need for that 4-3 front or 4-2 front. But yes, Myles Murphy gone. And then the Philadelphia Eagles are going to take Broderick Jones. We've got a run on lineman here at the end of the 1st. Jones just kind of sitting there. It's kind of a best player available pick for Philly. And, you know, I know safety is a need for them. Brian Branch could be an option, but to me, this is more in line with their identity. They have not really invested in that safety position. I think they feel like later rounds or finding guys in kind of the bottom of the barrel of free agency can do their job there. This is what the Eagles want to do. You have Lane Johnson is 33 years old. You don't know how long he's going to be able to continue. You have lost now Andre Dillard. You've lost Isaac Sayamalu. Kelsey getting closer and closer to retirement. The Eagles would be terrified of losing the pipeline on the offensive line, and they want to keep this thing going. Broderick Jones could start at guard for them. It would probably be a competition between him and Cam Jurgens, but it gives you long-term planning. This is exactly what the Eagles want. It's not a sexy pick. Eagles fans may or may not like this one. I think most Eagles fans are pretty smart and realize the value of what they do as far as like drafting guys before they need them and how valuable that's been for them. So I love this pick for the Eagles, even if you don't get immediate returns there. Then the Kansas City Chiefs but you might if he starts at right guard. The Kansas City Chiefs, one more offensive lineman off the board here, Darnell Wright And to get him and Jawan Taylor at right tackle, that's an upgrade from what they had last year. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory there. They lose both their starters at tackle. They need another one, and Wright's like the perfect fit. He's very similar to Orlando Brown in a lot of ways. All right, we've got 5 bonus picks before we get out of here. We're going to do the top 2 picks of the second round, the 32nd pick, which is essentially a first rounder here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got this from Da Bears. We're going to stay in state and take Kalijah Cansey. I've consistently had them taking Brian Brzee, not available in this situation, but Cansey can play 3-tech for them, really get after the quarterback. He defends the run better than you would expect for such a light player as well. And I love the fit, staying home and filling really their biggest need, being that interior defensive line after we addressed corner in the first. And then at 33, the Carolina Panthers, who got this pick from the Texans, are going to take Jordan Addison. So you have Addison, they just signed Adam Thielen, you have Marshall and Laviska Shenault, and all of a sudden, after kind of panicking, after giving up DJ Moore, this has resolved, and you have a solid group of receivers there for Stroud to throw to. And then with the 36th pick, the LA Rams, I think an absolute dream for them would be if BJ Ojulari were available. I have a first to a second round grade on him, so for a team that, hasn't had a lot of first round picks lately, you get a guy of that caliber here with the 36th pick. They aren't afraid to play lighter edge players. They've gone with guys like Leonard Floyd and another list of guys like Agbanya Okoronkwo. Ojulari would be a day one starter for them, a creative, effective pass rusher, total steal for the Rams. A player that is just kind of sneaking through the cracks in this really talented, deep edge group. Then the Cleveland Browns at pick 42. I love that they got Dalvin Tomlinson. I think it means they don't have to reach here. I will say Maisie Smith could make sense here if he were available, and that would be excellent value. But I'm actually going to take Jack Campbell. He would provide a lot of things here. For one, he just helps that run defense that's been such a problem. But additionally, he's going to help Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah by getting a little bit of beef next to him. And those two guys will play off each other so well. JOK can play in space, and Campbell can be close to the line of scrimmage and thump. And I love the idea of that duo. And fills a huge need for the Cleveland Browns. They don't really have a number 2 guy right now. Then the Miami Dolphins, our last bonus pick here, pick 51. It's borderline on if he will be available, but if he's there, you got to run Matthew Bergeron up to the podium because he's athletic. That offensive line is such a need for them. He could start at right tackle. He could start at left if and when Teron Armstead can't stay healthy, but a guy with first-round traits that might be sneaking into the second round in a deep tackle class. I think this is the floor for Matthew Bergeron as far as how late he could go. I don't see Miami letting him past them. All right, that is going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please do hit that like button. Definitely drop a comment down below what you think. Did you enjoy the pick I made for your team? I think we got every team other than San Francisco covered, I believe. Guys, check out my merchandise store. That link is in the description below. We got a draft season hoodie available now. And make sure you're subscribed. We got plenty of mock drafts and positional breakdown videos coming. This is going to be the last video of the week here because I'm in Mexico. But should be back next Monday with some more NFL draft stuff. So peace out. We'll see you later.